Bitcoin had a rough 2018, and for much of 2019, it's been steadily climbing. And from what we can gather, it's because there have been positive things taking place. You know, like a lot of the old whale wallets are buying Bitcoin, so it's been slow accumulation and steady accumulation.
The whale wallets, explain what that means.
That means just some of the original owners of Bitcoin. Some of them who liquidated at 20,000
are now
starting
doubling down.
Yeah, starting to buy back. And then we saw positive developments like BACT is coming, and a lot of infrastructure, Fidelity custody. Activity has been picking up, especially in regions where there's been a lot of inflation or political issues like Venezuela and Turkey. And I think finally we had a big move on April 1, which wasn't clear what caused it, but it was real evidence that there's a lot of dry powder, that the crypto community kept a lot of cash, was waiting for Bitcoin to break 3,000 when it didn't, and it made this move.
How important, though, ultimately, is it for the SEC to approve some form of ETF or other kind of financial instrument for this to actually take off in a meaningful way?
I think it's going to be a hugely positive development when,
assuming it
if
happens.
or when the SEC approves an ETF. And of course, there's a lot of hurdles for that to take place.
But what's the time horizon look like in your mind? Because people thought that was coming years ago.
Yeah, and I guess we've been kind of too optimistic about it, so I'd say it's probably a lot later than any of us expect.
Do you not think that some of the rise in the price of Bitcoin speaks to what's happening in the stock market writ large?
It feels like there's a catch-up rally because the S&P move year-to-date's 2 standard deviations. It's I think like the 10th best in the history of the stock market first quarter. If Bitcoin
you don't think this is a risk-on kind of situation? Yeah,
I think it is risk-on. Plus the dollar isn't going up and EM's rallying, and if Bitcoin rallied 2 standard deviations, it would be close to 19,000. So it's there is a big catch-up move if there is a catch-up move.
And you also have an argument about what the fair value of Bitcoin is today, which is actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's right. So if you were to take a combination of active addresses and activity per user, that's explained over 90% of Bitcoin since 2013. The fair value for Bitcoin right now is 14,000. So I'm not saying it has to trade at fair value, but
what do you mean? Why? How do you?
Bitcoin is a network value. Fiat currencies are basically how many people are willing to use it and adopt it. And I think
it's only trading at 30% of its fair value right now?
Yes.
What's the cost right now, though, to
mine a
Bitcoin?
And again, the break-evens they've come down, but it's around 5,000 or 6,000.
So why is the 5,000 or 6,000 not the fair price number?
Because a commodity during a bull period, and Bitcoin's above its 200-day, generally trades 2 to 2.5 times its break-even. So that would get you around 14,000 again. But in a bear market, it could trade below its break-even, and that's what we saw.
Are you buying a ton of this right now if you actually think it's undervalued by that extent?
Well, we think the best approach for most people is just to put 1% or 2%.
Are you saying that? I get that if you're somebody who's got a lot of assets. I still think it's crazy, but for a retail investor, somebody who's saving for retirement and putting that aside, that seems crazy to me.
Well, it's basically the idea that you can afford to lose 1% if that's 1% of your portfolio.
That's crazy. You might as well throw it away on high fees to an investor, to an average like this. You're taking a flyer on that. You don't know where it's going to go or what's going to happen.
Well, in a way, that's right, Becky. That for the majority of people, it's 1% is like a small risk bet. But Bitcoin makes all of its gains in 10 days in a year. I think this is an example that if you exclude the 10 best days, Bitcoin loses 25% a year. So you gotta essentially hold it or hodl it, as they say, to really capture the gains.